The ribbon was still falling when I realized the executive on stage was my father's smiling new partner, and the product voiceover was describing my prototype. Word for word. Feature for feature. The exact solution I'd spent 3 years developing, now being unveiled at the biggest tech conference of the year. The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras panned across the VIP row where my father sat, nodding like the proud benefactor he'd always planned to be. My stomach dropped, but somehow my hands stayed completely steady on the armrest. He'd actually done it. He'd sold my idea to a competitor. He'd sold it before I could file the full patent, before I could properly scale the prototype, before I could secure the funding I'd been working toward. And he'd sold it to Maxwell Crane, the man who'd been pretending to mentor me for the past 5 years. The stage lights gleamed off the product display, a sleek piece of technology that I'd designed in my tiny apartment, that I'd coded through endless nights, that I'd tested and refined until it was perfect. Now it sat there under someone else's name, someone else's brand, someone else's future. The presenter was talking about innovation and disruption and changing the industry. I watched him gesture enthusiastically at features I'd invented. My throat felt tight, but I didn't move. Didn't scream. Didn't storm the stage like every part of me wanted to. I just sat there, watching their polished demo play on loop while my father beamed with satisfaction. My father sat in the front row of the VIP section, exactly where he loved to be, close to power, close to money, close to recognition. He wore his expensive navy suit, the one he'd bought specifically for industry events like this. His expression was pure satisfaction, like he'd just closed the deal of his lifetime. Which, I supposed, he had. From my seat in the general audience, I could see him clearly. He leaned over to say something to the woman next to him, probably explaining his crucial role in bringing this product to market. She nodded, impressed. He'd always been good at impressing people, at making them believe he was responsible for successes he'd merely witnessed. My throat tightened as I watched him accept congratulations from the people around him. This was supposed to be my moment. 3 years ago, I'd come to him excited, nervous, holding my first working prototype. "Dad, I think I've figured something out," I'd said. Something that could really change how people interact with smart home technology. He'd listened carefully, asked intelligent questions, seemed genuinely interested. "Let me help you," he'd offered. "I know people in this industry. I can open doors." I'd believed him. I'd trusted that family meant protection, that a father would support his daughter's dreams instead of stealing them. Now I watched him bask in applause that should have been mine, and I understood exactly how wrong I'd been. My notebook was still open on my lap, pages filled with sketches and calculations and architectural diagrams. I'd brought it to the conference out of habit. I always carried it, always documented my ideas and improvements. Now I stared down at the proof sitting right there in plain sight. Design specifications dated 18 months ago. Algorithm improvements from last summer. Interface mockups that exactly matched what was being displayed on that stage right now. Every single innovation they were claiming as theirs, I'd documented in my own handwriting, with my own timestamps, in my own words. The sketch on the current page showed the exact same user interface currently being demonstrated. I'd drawn it 4 months ago during a meeting with my father, explaining how the interaction model would work. He'd nodded, taken notes, asked clarifying questions. "This is brilliant, Agatha," he'd said. "Have you thought about the patent process?" "I'm working on it," I'd replied. "The provisional filing is almost ready." "Don't rush it," he'd advised. "Make sure you get it right. These things take time." Now I understood what he'd really meant, delay long enough for him to move first. I closed the notebook carefully, my fingers tracing the worn cover. This wasn't just a collection of ideas. It was evidence. Documentation. Proof that everything they were celebrating had originated from me. And I'd made sure to preserve it in ways they didn't know about yet. Ways that would matter very soon. They clapped for innovation I'd explained to my father over dinner 6 months ago. The audience was on their feet now, giving Maxwell Crane a standing ovation for revolutionizing smart home integration. For solving a problem that had plagued the industry for years. For bringing to market a solution that was elegant, intuitive, and game-changing. I'd used those exact words when I'd first explained the concept to my father. We'd been at his favorite restaurant, the one with the private booths where he liked to conduct business. I'd been so excited I could barely eat. The problem is that current systems require too much manual configuration, I'd explained, gesturing with my hands. People want their homes to be smart, but they don't want to spend hours programming everything. My solution uses adaptive learning combined with predictive algorithms to automate the entire setup process. My father had listened intently, occasionally jotting notes on his phone. The market for this could be enormous, he'd said. Have you calculated the potential valuation? Conservatively? 50 million in the first 3 years, I'd replied. If adoption rates match my projections. He'd smiled then, that proud father smile I'd always wanted to earn. I'm impressed, Agatha. This could really be something special. Now I watched that same smile as he accepted congratulations from industry leaders. He'd believed me about the valuation. He'd just decided he'd rather own it than watch me build it. The applause finally faded. I stayed seated. Silent. Steady. Let them celebrate. Let them think they'd won. They had no idea what was coming. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out carefully, keeping my eyes on the stage. A text from Dr. Helena Fisher, my old mentor from graduate school, saw the announcement. I'm so sorry. Call me when you can. She knew. Of course she knew. Helena had been following my project since the beginning, had helped me refine the early algorithms, had written one of my recommendation letters for the innovation grant I'd applied for last year. She'd seen my work, understood its value, and now she was watching someone else take credit for it. I typed back quickly, thank you. I'm okay. We'll call soon. 3 more messages came through in rapid succession. Fellow developers I'd collaborated with. Industry contacts who'd seen my early demos. People who knew this was my work, my innovation, my future being stolen in real time. This is your project, isn't it? Are you seeing this? Please tell me they licensed this from you. I didn't respond to those yet. Couldn't risk my emotions showing on my face, not here where cameras might catch my reaction. Instead, I switched to a different app and opened the folder I'd labeled Documentation. Inside were hundreds of files. Code repositories with commit histories showing my development timeline. Video logs of my testing process. Email threads discussing technical challenges and solutions. And most importantly, the provisional patent application I'd filed 3 months ago. Quietly. Carefully. Without telling my father. I'd learned early in my career that trust was a luxury, even with family. I'd just learned it too late to prevent this moment. But not too late to respond to it. My name is Agatha Louise Mercer, and I'm 27 years old. I've been building technology since I was 16, when I taught myself to code because I was bored during summer vacation. I have a master's degree in computer engineering from Stanford and 3 years of experience at a major tech company before I decided to strike out on my own. This smart home integration system was supposed to be my breakthrough. The project that would establish me as a serious innovator, not just another talented engineer. The idea had come to me during a frustrating afternoon trying to set up my own smart home devices. Each product required a different app, different protocols, different configuration processes. Nothing talked to each other smoothly. The user experience was terrible. There has to be a better way, I'd thought. So I'd started building one. Nights and weekends at first, then full-time after I'd saved enough to quit my job. I'd poured everything into this, my savings, my time, my credibility. I'd believed that doing good work would be enough, that building something valuable would speak for itself. My father had seemed like the perfect ally. He'd been in the tech industry for 30 years, knew everyone, understood how these things worked. Let me help you navigate this, he'd offered. I can introduce you to the right people, help you avoid common mistakes. I'd let him in. Showed him everything. Trusted him completely. Now I sat in this auditorium watching him profit from that trust, and I had to decide who I was going to be. The victim who got crushed by betrayal? Or the founder who'd prepared for exactly this possibility? I took a breath and stood up. Time to find out. I'd sketched the first wireframe when I was 24, sitting in a coffee shop on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. The concept had hit me all at once, a system that could learn user preferences automatically, predict needs before they arose, and coordinate all smart home devices through a single, elegant interface. I'd grabbed my notebook and started drawing immediately. Boxes and arrows showing how data would flow. Notes about machine learning models and API integrations. Rough calculations about processing requirements and response times. By the time I looked up, 3 hours had passed and my coffee had gone cold. But I had the foundation of something revolutionary. Over the next 2 years, I'd refined that initial concept into a working prototype. I'd taught myself new programming languages. I'd studied user behavior patterns. I'd tested dozens of approaches until I found the ones that worked. The technical challenges had been enormous. Creating algorithms that could accurately predict user intent without being intrusive. Building interfaces that felt intuitive even to non-technical users. Ensuring security while maintaining convenience. But I'd solved them. One by one, through persistence and creativity and countless failed experiments. My emotional investment in this project went far beyond the time and money I'd spent. This was my vision, my contribution to making technology more human. Every feature represented a problem I'd personally experienced and solved. Every line of code reflected my values about what technology should do for people. And now it sat on that stage wearing someone else's name. That hurt more than the financial loss, more than the stolen opportunity. They'd taken my work and erased me from it. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd assumed I hadn't prepared for betrayal. They were wrong. The trust had felt so natural. My father was my father. Why wouldn't I trust him? He'd raised me, supported my education, encouraged my interest in technology. When I'd first told him about the smart home project, his enthusiasm had seemed genuine. This is exactly the kind of innovation the industry needs, he'd said. I'm proud of you for tackling such an ambitious problem. He'd offered advice that seemed helpful at the time. Suggestions about market positioning, recommendations for potential partners, warnings about common pitfalls in hardware development. You're talented, Agatha, but you're also young, he'd explained. There are predators in this industry who'll steal your ideas if you're not careful. Let me help protect you. So I'd let him. Introduced him to my technical leads. Shared my development roadmap. Gave him access to my prototype demonstrations. I need to understand the full scope to give you good advice, he'd said. I'd believed that was true. The sting now wasn't just that he'd betrayed me. It was that he'd used my trust as the weapon. Every conversation where I'd explained my vision, every meeting where I'd demonstrated new features, every email where I'd shared progress updates, all of it had been intelligence gathering. He'd been evaluating my work not to help me, but to determine if it was worth stealing. And apparently, it was. Maxwell Crane, his new partner, had probably been part of the plan from the beginning. All those mentorship sessions where Maxwell had encouraged me to be patient, to perfect the technology before going to market, those had been delay tactics. Keeping me busy improving the product while they prepared to take it. I'd trusted both of them. Now I'd learned exactly what that trust was worth. I'd filed the provisional patent 3 months ago, quietly and carefully, without mentioning it to anyone. Not my father. Not Maxwell. Not even most of my team. Just my patent attorney, a sharp woman named Veronica who'd seen enough startup drama to know when discretion mattered. You're being smart, she'd said when I'd hired her. Family businesses can get complicated. Document everything, protect your IP, and hope you never need to use it. I'd hoped that too. But I'd also prepared. The provisional patent application included detailed technical specifications, architectural diagrams, and claims covering every core innovation of my system. It established a filing date that proved my ownership of the underlying technology. And crucially, it provided a 12-month window to file the full patent while maintaining priority. I'd filed it 2 weeks after a conversation with my father where he'd seemed unusually interested in my patent timeline. Have you started the filing process yet? He'd asked. Not yet, I'd lied. I want to make sure I have all the improvements documented first. He'd nodded approvingly. Good thinking. No rush. Better to do it right than do it fast. That night, I'd called Veronica and told her to expedite the provisional filing. Something in his tone had set off alarm bells. Trust, but verify, as they say. Except I'd stopped trusting and started verifying everything. The provisional patent sat in the U.S. Patent Office database right now, dated exactly 93 days ago. Proof that I'd invented this technology before it ever appeared on anyone else's product roadmap. They could launch their product. They could claim innovation. But they couldn't claim ownership. Not legally. Not if I had anything to say about it. I'd archived my prototype builds to 3 independent servers over the past 18 months. Cloud storage with tamper-proof timestamps. Blockchain-based version control. And old-fashioned external hard drives stored in 2 different bank safety deposit boxes. Every significant development milestone was documented with multiple forms of evidence. Code repositories showing my commit history. Video recordings of testing sessions with metadata proving when they were filmed. Email threads with suppliers and manufacturers discussing component specifications. Design files with creation dates embedded in the file properties. I'd even kept physical notebooks with dated entries describing my thought process and decision-making. Veronica had called it paranoid when I'd first explained my documentation strategy. Most founders don't go to these lengths, she'd said. Are you expecting problems? I'm expecting to need proof someday, I'd replied. I don't know what kind or when, but I know that in this industry, your word isn't worth much without receipts. She'd approved. Helped me establish protocols for preserving evidence in legally defensible ways. Taught me which kinds of documentation would hold up under scrutiny and which wouldn't. If someone ever challenges your ownership of this technology, you want to be able to bury them in proof, she'd explained. Not just one piece of evidence they can dismiss, but an overwhelming pile they can't explain away. That pile existed now. Distributed across multiple locations, backed up redundantly, time-stamped by independent authorities. They'd launched a product based on my technology. I had receipts proving it was mine. The question wasn't whether I could prove theft. The question was what I'd choose to do with that proof. And I'd been preparing that answer for 3 months. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Harrison Wells, one of the investors who'd been following my project since its early stages. Did you see the Crane Industries announcement? His text read. That's your system, isn't it? Harrison was sharp. He'd reviewed my technical documentation last year when I'd first approached him about potential funding. He'd passed at the time, too early stage for our fund, but he'd stayed in touch, checking in periodically to see how the project evolved. Now he'd recognized my work being presented under someone else's brand. I typed back, yes. It's mine. I'm handling it. 3 dots appeared as he typed. Do you need legal support? I know people. Already covered. Thank you. The dots appeared again, then disappeared. Then reappeared. If you end up raising a round after this settles, call me first. I should have invested when you first pitched. I smiled despite everything. At least someone was beginning to understand what was actually happening here. This wasn't just theft. It was validation. They'd stolen my work because it was good enough to steal, valuable enough to risk legal consequences. And now people were watching. The launch wasn't just announcing a product. It was proving market demand, demonstrating commercial viability, establishing a price point. All the things I'd needed to prove to investors but hadn't had the resources to do myself. Maxwell Crane had just spent millions of dollars proving my business model worked. On his dime. With his credibility on the line. And I'd been preparing for exactly this scenario. The provisional patent. The documented timeline. The archived evidence. And yes, the small syndicate of investors I'd quietly lined up over the past 2 months. People who'd seen the unreleased alpha. People who were watching this launch for the same reasons I was. I did nothing publicly. Didn't post on social media. Didn't send angry emails. Didn't call my father or Maxwell or anyone else involved in the launch. I just sat in that auditorium, watching their presentation, taking notes in my notebook like any other interested attendee. Calm. Professional. Unremarkable. While my mind raced through the next steps of a plan I'd been developing since the moment I'd first suspected betrayal. The launch continued with technical demonstrations. They showed the setup process, my streamlined onboarding flow. They demonstrated the adaptive learning, my predictive algorithms. They highlighted the unified interface, my design language. Feature after feature, innovation after innovation, all mine. I documented everything they claimed. Every statement about development timeline. Every assertion about original research. Every claim about proprietary technology. All of it would matter soon. After the presentation ended, I stayed in my seat while the crowd dispersed. Watched my father make his way toward the stage to congratulate Maxwell. Saw them shake hands, laughing about something. Probably about how smoothly the launch had gone. How perfectly they'd executed the theft. I pulled out my phone and opened a secure note-taking app. Started transcribing key quotes from the presentation while they were fresh in my mind. Developed over 18 months of intensive research that overlapped with my documented timeline. Proprietary algorithms that required breakthrough thinking. I had the commit history showing exactly when I'd written those algorithms. A solution the industry has been waiting for. They'd used my exact pitch language. Every word they'd spoken was evidence. Every claim they'd made was a potential legal liability. And I was collecting all of it, time-stamping it, preserving it. Building the case I'd need. Quietly. Carefully. Without drama. The way my father had taught me to work. Ironic, really. I'd requested an independent IP audit 4 weeks ago, right after I'd started suspecting my father might be planning something. Veronica had recommended the firm, specialists in technology patent disputes who could conduct thorough analyses without tipping off potential adversaries. We need to establish a clear record of your development timeline, she'd explained. If someone tries to claim they developed this technology independently, we need proof that you were first. Not just your word against theirs, but independent verification. The audit team had spent 3 weeks reviewing my documentation. Code repositories. Design files. Communication records. Testing logs. They'd interviewed members of my development team. Examined my hardware prototypes. Analyzed my patent application. Their report had arrived 2 days ago. 87 pages of detailed analysis concluding that I was the clear originator of every core innovation in the smart home integration system. That the development timeline was well documented and consistent. That the technology showed clear evidence of iterative improvement over time, exactly what you'd expect from genuine innovation. The report sat in Veronica's office right now, ready to be filed with the court if necessary. But more importantly, it sat in the back of my mind as I watched Maxwell Crane accept congratulations for stealing my work. I had independent, professional verification of my ownership. They had a flashy launch based on technology they couldn't explain developing. The audit wasn't just evidence. It was insurance. Proof that I'd taken this seriously from the beginning, that I'd documented properly, that I'd prepared for exactly this scenario. Because I'd learned something important over the past few years. In technology, paranoia isn't a flaw. It's a survival skill. My syndicate had signed the term sheet 3 weeks ago, contingent on the audit results and one other factor, market validation. Your technology is impressive, Harrison had said during our negotiation. But we need proof that the market is ready for it. That customers will actually pay for this solution. How would you like me to prove that? I'd asked. Without capital to launch properly? He'd smiled. That's the tricky part, isn't it? Catch-22 of startup funding. You need money to prove the market, but you need to prove the market to get money. The term sheet had included an unusual clause. If a competitor launched a similar product and achieved significant market traction within 90 days, the syndicate would release funds immediately. No further validation needed. You're betting someone will steal your idea? Harrison's partner had asked, reading the clause. I'm preparing for all possibilities, I'd replied carefully. Now that possibility had become reality. Crane Industries had just launched my product at the industry's biggest conference. Announced partnerships with 3 major retailers. Projected first-year sales of $40 million. They'd done exactly what Harrison needed, proven market demand, demonstrated customer willingness to pay, established distribution channels. All the validation metrics my investors had wanted. On someone else's dime. My phone buzzed with a message from Harrison, "I'm calling an emergency syndicate meeting tomorrow. I think your contingency clause just activated." I typed back, "Agreed. My lawyer will send the audit report tonight." The leverage was forming exactly as I'd planned. Not through confrontation, but through preparation. They'd launched the product. I'd launched the response. And I had everything I needed to make sure my response was overwhelming. The PR tour started immediately. By that evening, tech blogs were publishing glowing previews. Crane Industries revolutionizes smart home integration. Maxwell Crane's latest innovation could change everything. The future of connected living arrives today. Every article cited Maxwell as the visionary behind the product. My father was mentioned in several pieces as an advisor who'd helped bring the technology to market. One journalist called me an inspired outsider who'd provided early research that informed the project. I read that line 3 times, my laugh coming out soft and bitter. An inspired outsider. That was how they decided to frame my role. Not as the inventor, not as the creator, but as someone who'd provided inspiration for their innovation. The term was perfectly chosen. Vague enough to avoid legal liability, dismissive enough to minimize my contribution, generous enough to sound magnanimous. "We're grateful to everyone who contributed ideas during development," Maxwell said in one interview. "Innovation is a collaborative process." Collaborative. Right. Except I'd never agreed to collaborate. I'd never signed over my IP. I'd never authorized them to use my technology. But the PR machine didn't care about those details. It cared about crafting a narrative, building buzz, generating excitement. And they were very good at it. Articles were shared thousands of times. Industry leaders posted congratulations on social media. Pre-orders started rolling in. The launch was, by every measure, a massive success. They'd stolen my work and turned it into a PR triumph. And that triumph was about to become their biggest liability. Because every article, every interview, every public claim about the technology's origin was creating evidence. Evidence I'd need very soon. The meeting request came 2 days after the launch. An email from someone named Trevor Huang, lead engineer at Crane Industries. "Would love to explore potential collaboration opportunities," he wrote. "We're always looking for talented developers to join our ecosystem." I read the email 3 times, parsing the subtext. They wanted to bring me in. Probably as a contractor or consultant. Give me a small role that would make it harder to claim they'd stolen from me. "She worked with us on the project," they could say. This was a collaborative effort. The offer was carefully worded. Not an employment contract. Not an acquisition proposal. Just collaboration opportunities, vague enough to mean anything, appealing enough to seem generous. They were trying to neutralize the threat I represented. I showed the email to Veronica during our daily check-in call. "What do you think?" I asked. "I think they're scared," she replied. "Or at least, someone over there is smart enough to be worried. They're trying to create a paper trail that makes you look like a participant rather than a victim." Should I respond? Politely decline. Don't accuse, don't argue, just professionally pass on the opportunity. We want to seem reasonable when this eventually goes legal. I crafted my response carefully. "Thank you for reaching out. I appreciate the interest, but I'm currently focused on my own projects and not looking for collaboration at this time. Best of luck with your launch." Professional. Neutral. Final. I hit send and watched the email disappear into the void. They'd tried to co-opt me. I'd refused. Now they'd have to decide whether to ignore me and hope I went away, or prepare for the fight that was coming. Either way, I was ready. More ready than they could possibly imagine. The internal emails surfaced 6 days after the launch. I didn't leak them, someone inside Crane Industries did. A disgruntled employee, maybe, or someone with a conscience. The emails appeared on an anonymous tech industry blog known for publishing corporate scandals. The headline read, Crane Industries emails suggest IP theft in smart home launch. I opened the link with my heart pounding. The first email was from my father to Maxwell, dated 4 months ago. I've secured the complete technical specifications for the home integration system. Agatha trusts me completely and has shared everything. The technology is more advanced than we initially thought. This could be worth significantly more than our first projections. My hands went cold reading those words. Secured. Like he'd accomplished something difficult. Like stealing from his own daughter was an achievement to be proud of. The second email was Maxwell's response. Excellent work. Have your team begin implementation immediately. We'll need to move fast before she files the full patent. Our legal reviewed the provisional. We can work around most of her claims if we're strategic about the architecture. They'd known about my provisional patent. Had reviewed it. Had deliberately designed around it while using my core innovations. The third email was the most damaging. My father again, 3 weeks ago. Thanks for securing the IP before launch. The board is thrilled with the early projections. Agatha still doesn't suspect anything. By the time she realizes what happened, it'll be too late to stop us. His signature sat at the bottom of that email. Formal. Professional. Proof of intent. The blog post was exploding across social media. Thousands of shares in the first hour. Industry leaders expressing outrage. Journalists demanding comment from Crane Industries. And I sat there, reading my father's words, feeling the final piece of evidence click into place. They documented their own theft. All I had to do was use it. My provisional patent included a specific clause that Veronica had insisted on adding. If anyone produced a product with substantial similarity to my claims within the 12-month provisional period, my patent priority would be triggered automatically. The full patent application would be filed immediately, with the provisional date as the priority date. It's a defensive mechanism, Veronica had explained. If someone tries to steal your technology and launch before you do, this clause protects your rights. You don't have to wait for the full development timeline you originally planned. You can convert the provisional immediately and claim priority over their implementation. I hadn't fully understood the implications at the time. Now I did. The Crane Industries product matched my provisional claims in every meaningful way. Same core architecture. Same algorithmic approaches. Same user interface concepts. The production parallels were undeniable, and they aligned perfectly with my documented timestamps. The clause had triggered the moment they'd launched. Veronica had filed the full patent application that same day, citing the provisional priority date. Now my patent was in the queue with a filing date 3 months before Crane Industries had even announced their product. When their patent application eventually came through, and it would, they'd be stupid not to file, mine would have priority. They'd be the ones infringing. Not me. The legal mechanics were beautiful in their simplicity. They'd rushed to market thinking speed would protect them. Instead, their launch had activated the exact legal protections I'd prepared. Every product they sold was now potential evidence of infringement. Every dollar they made was potential damages I could claim. They'd thought stealing the idea would stop me. Instead, they'd just proved how valuable it was. And handed me the leverage I needed to finish what I'd started. On my terms, not theirs. My lawyer sent the formal demand letter 8 days after the launch. It went to Crane Industries' board of directors, their general counsel, and Maxwell Crane personally. Copies also went to my father, though he wasn't named as a defendant, yet. The letter was 14 pages of meticulously documented evidence. My provisional patent filing with its priority date. The independent IP audit confirming my ownership of the core technology. Timestamped code repositories showing my development timeline. The leaked internal emails proving their knowledge and intent. Screenshots of their product matching my patent claims. and a detailed analysis of how their launch had triggered my patent conversion clause. We demand immediate cessation of all sales, marketing, and distribution of the infringing product, Veronica had written. Additionally, we demand compensation for damages incurred, including but not limited to lost revenue, market opportunity costs, and reputational harm. The letter outlined 3 options. Option 1, cease all product sales immediately and destroy existing inventory. Option 2, negotiate a licensing agreement acknowledging my ownership and paying appropriate royalties. Option 3, face immediate litigation for patent infringement, misappropriation of trade secrets, and breach of fiduciary duty. We prefer to resolve this matter professionally and privately, the letter concluded. However, we are fully prepared to pursue all available legal remedies if necessary. Along with the letter, Veronica included a copy of the complete IP audit. 87 pages of independent analysis proving I'd created every innovation they'd claimed as their own. Now it was on record. Official. Documented. They couldn't claim ignorance anymore. Couldn't pretend this was a misunderstanding. They had to respond. Had to choose which path they'd take. And whatever they chose, I was ready. Because I'd been preparing for this exact moment since the day I'd first suspected betrayal. The back-channel conversations started within hours of the demand letter being delivered. Harrison called first. I just heard through my network that Crane Industries is in crisis mode. Their board called an emergency meeting this morning. Good, I replied. What else are you hearing? That several investors are asking hard questions. That their stock price dropped 3% today. That Maxwell Crane is lawyering up aggressively. He paused. And that people are calling me asking about your technology and whether you're raising a round. I felt something shift in my chest. Who's calling? 3 different VCs in the past 4 hours. 2 strategic investors. And someone from the acquisition team at one of the major tech companies. He laughed. Apparently nothing makes investors more interested than the possibility they might miss out on something valuable. The irony was perfect. 6 months ago, these same investors had passed on my pitch. Too early stage. Needs more development. Come back when you have market validation. Now that someone had stolen my work and proven the market, suddenly they were desperate to invest. What are you telling them? I asked. Harrison's voice took on a sharper edge. That you're in high demand, that we're finalizing our syndicate terms this week, and that anyone who wants in better move fast. I'm creating FOMO, and it's working beautifully. FOMO. Fear of missing out. The most powerful force in venture capital. They'd ignored me when I needed them. Now they were competing for access because someone else had validated what I'd been saying all along. Set up meetings for next week, I said. After we see how Crane Industries responds to the demand letter. I want maximum leverage before we start talking terms. Smart, Harrison agreed. Let them watch you win this fight first. Nothing attracts money like watching someone successfully defend their IP. I hung up and stared at my laptop screen. The investors who'd dismissed me were now calling. The rooms I'd been shut out of were now opening. And all because someone had been arrogant enough to steal my work publicly. My father had tried to destroy my future. Instead, he just accelerated it. Their counsel called Veronica 4 days after receiving the demand letter. She conferenced me in on the call, my phone on mute so I could listen without participating. We've reviewed your client's claims, their lawyer began. His voice was careful, professional. Crane Industries disputes several of your assertions, but we're interested in exploring resolution options. What specifically do you dispute? Veronica asked. The extent of your client's contributions to the final product. The validity of certain patent claims. The characterization of our client's development process. All vague corporate speak. Wiggle room for negotiation. And what resolution options interest you? Veronica pressed. We're prepared to offer a non-disclosure agreement and discuss potential acquisition of your client's IP rights. We believe a negotiated settlement would benefit all parties. Translation: They wanted to buy my silence and my technology. Make the problem go away by throwing money at it. What kind of acquisition are you proposing? Veronica asked. Full assignment of all patent rights, including the provisional and full applications. Appropriate compensation for your client's development work. And a mutual non-disparagement agreement. I wanted to laugh. They'd stolen my work, gotten caught, and now wanted me to sign away my rights and promise not to talk about it. All for appropriate compensation, whatever that meant. Veronica glanced at me. I shook my head firmly. We're not interested in full assignment, Veronica said. If Crane Industries wants to use my client's technology, we're open to discussing licensing terms. But my client retains ownership and control of her IP. Silence on the other end. We'll need to discuss this with our client and get back to you. Take your time, Veronica replied. But be aware that every day this product remains on the market is another day of potential damages. After the call ended, Veronica unmuted me. They're scared. That's a good opening offer to reject. What happens now? Now we wait for them to realize they don't have leverage. Then we present our actual terms. I smiled. The power had shifted completely. And they were just beginning to understand how thoroughly they'd miscalculated. I didn't take the first offer. Instead, I spent the weekend drafting counterterms with Veronica. Not a buyout. Not an acquisition. A licensing agreement that left me in control while making Crane Industries pay for every unit they sold. We want ongoing royalties, not a lump sum, I explained to Veronica. If this product is as successful as they're projecting, the long-term value far exceeds whatever they'd pay up front. Agreed, Veronica said. What else? I want attribution. Public acknowledgement that I'm the inventor of the core technology. Not as a footnote, but as a formal credit in all marketing materials. They'll resist that. It undermines their innovation narrative. Then they can stop selling the product, I replied. This isn't negotiable. They don't get to erase me from my own work. We built out the terms carefully. 20% royalty on all gross sales. Public attribution as the original inventor. Right to audit their sales records quarterly. And most importantly, retention of all IP rights. I would license the technology to them, not sell it. This gives you leverage for the future, Veronica explained. If they breach the agreement, you can revoke the license. If you want to license to other companies later, you can. You're not giving up control, just granting permission. The terms were aggressive. Much more aggressive than their acquisition offer. But I had the leverage now. The patent priority. The documented evidence. The public pressure from the leaked emails. And most critically, the market validation. They'd proven my technology was worth millions. Now they'd pay millions to keep using it. Monday morning, Veronica sent our counterproposal to their counsel. Then we waited. The power shift was complete. I wasn't asking to be let back into rooms anymore. I was deciding who deserved access to what I'd built. And that made all the difference. I announced my own product launch 3 days later, before Crane Industries had responded to our counterproposal. Not a competing product, a complementary one. A companion app that worked with any smart home integration system, including theirs, but added features they hadn't thought to include. Privacy controls. Energy optimization. Predictive maintenance alerts. All built on technology I'd developed alongside the main system but kept separate. The announcement went out through my syndicate's PR channels. Harrison had insisted on making it a big reveal, press release, demo video, beta sign-up page. Show the market that they didn't steal everything, he'd advised. Prove that you're still innovating, still ahead of them. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Tech blogs picked up the story within hours. Agatha Mercer, the inventor allegedly stolen from by Crane Industries, launches competing product. The narrative had shifted. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a competitor. And my product was better. Faster development cycle. Cleaner code. Features that users had been requesting that Crane Industries hadn't addressed. Within 24 hours, we had 50,000 beta signups. Within 48 hours, 2 major retailers reached out about distribution deals. Within 72 hours, 3 different companies contacted us about licensing partnerships. The market was validating me. Not through someone else's theft, but through my own work. On my own terms, with my own brand. This was what I'd been building toward all along, not fighting to reclaim what was stolen, but moving forward with what they couldn't take. My creativity. My innovation. My ability to keep building. The announcement accomplished exactly what I'd intended. It showed Crane Industries that shutting me down wasn't an option. It showed investors that I was worth backing. And it showed the industry that stealing my work hadn't stopped me. It had only made me work harder and smarter. My father had underestimated me. Maxwell had underestimated me. They'd both assumed that taking one product would end my career. Instead, it just freed me to build the next one. And the next one after that. My father's role became a public question 6 days after my product announcement. A journalist from a major tech publication published an investigative piece, "The Father Who Sold His Daughter's Startup." The article laid out the timeline meticulously. How I'd developed the technology. How I'd shared it with my father seeking advice. How he'd connected with Maxwell Crane. How the internal emails proved premeditation. And how I'd responded by launching my own competing product while pursuing legal action. The piece quoted the leaked emails extensively. My father's words about securing the IP, and thanks for securing my technology. His assurances that I still doesn't suspect anything. His celebration of betraying me. The industry reaction was swift and brutal. Board members at companies where my father held advisory roles began distancing themselves. We were unaware of Mr. Mercer's actions regarding his daughter's intellectual property, one company stated. We're reviewing his relationship with our organization. 2 companies announced they were terminating his consulting contracts pending investigation. A third asked him to step down from their board immediately. Professional networks that had celebrated him last week were now calling for accountability. Posts appeared questioning whether someone who'd steal from family could be trusted in business. Former colleagues issued careful statements expressing disappointment. The fall wasn't dramatic or instant. It was steady erosion, the kind that happens when people realize someone isn't who they pretended to be. Invitations stopped coming. Calls went unreturned. Opportunities dried up. He'd built his reputation on being connected, being trusted, being the person who could make things happen. Now that reputation was toxic. And every day brought new consequences. My father had taught me that relationships mattered more than anything in business. Now he was learning what happened when those relationships discovered you couldn't be trusted. The arrogance of thinking he could betray me publicly and face no consequences, that was costing him everything he'd built. And I hadn't said a single word against him publicly. I'd just let his own documented actions speak for themselves. Their product started fading from the market within 3 months. Not because they stopped selling it, they couldn't, they had contracts to fulfill. But because my complementary product was better, faster, and came from a founder people wanted to support. The narrative had shifted completely. Buying from Crane Industries meant supporting a company that had stolen from an inventor. Buying from me meant supporting innovation and integrity. Customers chose accordingly. Their sales projections dropped 30% in month 1. 45% in month 2. Retailers started requesting discounts to move inventory that wasn't selling. Returns increased. New partnerships stalled. Meanwhile, my launch was exceeding every projection. We hit profitability in month 2. Expanded to 3 new markets in month 3. Signed partnerships with 2 major smart home manufacturers who wanted to integrate my technology. Harrison's syndicate had released the full funding package after seeing early traction. We raised $8 million at a valuation that made me the majority shareholder. Retained full control. Hired a team of 12 talented engineers who believed in what we were building. The IP dispute settled quietly. Crane Industries agreed to my licensing terms rather than face prolonged litigation they'd likely lose. 20% royalty on all sales. Public attribution in their marketing materials. My name on the patents. They paid. I kept ownership. And I moved forward building something bigger than they'd tried to steal. My father reached out once, 3 months after everything collapsed. A text message, "Can we talk?" I deleted it without responding. Some betrayals don't deserve reconciliation. Some people don't deserve second chances. I'd learned that the hard way, and I wouldn't forget it. The finish wasn't about revenge or triumph. It was about reclaiming control of my own work, my own narrative, my own future. They'd thought stealing my idea would stop me from building. Instead, it forced me to build smarter, stronger, with better protection and clearer vision. Their product faded. My company scaled. I kept custody of my IP and my name. And I learned the most important lesson of all: the people who steal your work can't steal your ability to create. They can take one product, but they can't take your innovation, your determination, or your future. I'd proven that. And I'd do it again if I had to. But next time, I wouldn't trust anyone with my work until I'd protected it first. That was a lesson worth learning. Even if it cost me my relationship with my father to learn it.